Hey guys, so I'm guessing we're all pretty much in quarantine by this point, and instead of a regular old boring tutorial this week, I figured I'd spice it up and give you a fun, awesome game you can play in Excel. And make sure to subscribe and accept notifications so you can see all the new tutorials. So I decided to look for snake games and I found an amazing one by this guy Ken. Let me show you the game and then we'll go through it. So 3, 2, 1, go! And then you just eat the little dot, get bigger, and just keep going. And if you crash into yourself or the wall, then the game is over. And it gives you your score, and it'll save your score. So if you keep playing and you get a higher score, then you get a higher score, and it'll record that up here under best. It is an awesome little game. It's perfect for Excel, and especially now when no one's probably going to be looking over your shoulder while you're working. In this game, it just works so well. So I've got the links to the game under the video, including to Ken's Reddit page and YouTube page and everywhere. All the information I got on it, I'm going to give you. So what I want to do is now that I've showed you this game and I've told you about the link so you can go and download the game and play it on your computer, I want to go through the game a little bit. So we'll look at some of the code, we'll look at how he made this, and then I'll show you where you can change things for your version if you want, because this is completely open. So download it, play it, change it however you want. It's really, really cool. And the first thing I want to note is that when you open it on your computer, the moment you enable macros, it will make this full screen. You can make it smaller if you want after that, and it will have a little instructions thing, little instructions window right here. Click Start Game to start. Use the arrows to move. And this really is a great snake game. There's a bunch of them online, but this one, it just is head and shoulders above all the others that I've played. So for the first thing, let's take a look at what he's done here in the worksheet. It's pretty cool. Over here you can choose a difficulty, so easy, normal, hard, and it increases the score and also the speed of the snake dude. So if I put it on hard and start the game, then it's going to go much faster. So we should see now, yep, much, much faster. And you can change the snake color. So let's see, green and easy and start game. I just love this. All right, so anyway, I'm going to stop wasting time. The first thing I want to do is let's go ahead and unprotect everything. So click in here, unprotect sheet. Okay. And let's go down here. You can see all the named ranges. So arena bottom right, top left, best. So if I click that, that's a score over here. And a bunch of cool things. But the thing that I think is really cool, and I want you to get some things out of this tutorial. So I'm going to show you some of the things I found cool that he did. Countdown 1, 2, 3, and go. Well, what he did is he named the number as a range, so that in the code, all he has to do is refer to the named range. And I thought that was a cool little, nifty little thing that he did. And then, of course, go as well. And then he made it so the interface changes a bit, so there's no row and column headings and no grid lines and so on. But the coolest thing I think is the countdown timer here. And then we have snake head, start, and tail. We might not focus on that too much, but you can see that he's named some ranges, and we're going to use those in the code. So let's go to the code now and take a little peek at that. I promise not to go through everything. I'll try not to. Alt F11. Let's click in there. Alt F11. All right, so the first thing we see is the form. And so he uses a form to do your score at the end there. Just a really simple form. I'm not going to cover that here. But what I think is kind of interesting is to look at the first thing, which is what's going to happen when you open the workbook after you enable macros. So you've got Windows State, Excel maximized, and then you've got a few things down here, including getting the instructions. One thing that you might want to do is you can kill the status bar, formula bar, scroll bars, and you could also remove this dude up here or just minimize it. So you can get rid of the interface or change the interface however you want on your setup. I think that the reason he didn't do that here, I think it says why. Commented out because it affects all files. Yeah, so basically he just didn't want to change the interface for all of Excel and then have you freak out later wondering why you can't see things. But I think it's kind of cool if you remove these. Just know that it's going to change the Excel interface, the entire Excel interface. but it's easy to change back later. Just change all the falses to true. So let's go module 2 first. Just a little instruction, dude. Simple message box, nothing very interesting there. Module 1, this is where all the action happens, and it's pretty darn cool. So let's see, up here, all I'm going to cover is that get async key state is how we're going to get the up, down, left, right, and also Q. If you hit Q, it'll close or it'll quit the game, although it doesn't tell you that in the instructions. And then let's go down here. This is another cool thing. Delays between movement and milliseconds for each difficulty. And these are his comments. So this is already in there like that. So it's made really easy for you to take a look at. Or not really easy, but easy enough. So if you wanted to speed it up, all you need to do is to change this number. If you wanted to make it much, much faster, you could change these numbers here and play around with that. So I'm sure that could be kind of fun. The next thing, and this is actually important if you want to figure out how this macro works, sort of the, I don't know, it's not the backbone of it, but really the cool way that he made all of this work, is you need to take a look at this section and you need to remember that, I hate this code window. Okay, white is like this, RGB, RGB max, max, max. And then we have, he calls it the apple. I guess it was an apple in one version of the Snake game, or every version, I don't know. RGB max, 0 RGB max. So this is going to be used a lot in the code for the pink and the white. And that's because the really cool things that are done here to figure out where the snake's going, if it's eaten the apple or not, if it's going outside the arena, it's all done using color. So then down here we have direction. So 1 is right, 2 down, 3 left, 4 up. And that's just used in the code. So he makes a note here so that you understand that. Here we have snake. This is what actually holds all the information about the snake. And so you can see two things here, is that it is an array. You see the opening and closing parentheses, and it's a range array. So every item in the array is going to be a range reference. So that makes it easier to apply color changes to the cells because every item in the array is in a range, so you just work directly on the range. Then you have some other things down here, which I'm not really going to cover. It is not pretty self-explanatory, I'd say. But then we have count and length, and if you're trying to understand the code, these two dudes are pretty important. They are going to control the size and the colors of the snake. All right, and then we get down here to new game, which is going to set up the board for us. And nothing too interesting here, just make sure that everything is set up correctly. It sets up the snake for us, so that it'll have a default length of 2 squares. That's the important part from here, I'd say. And here you can see how they're making the snake. So redim preserve snake 1, 2 count. So count is 2. So it's going to have 2 items in the snake array by default. So we have a snake 1 and a snake 2. It's just for the first part and the second part. The snake tail and the snake head. So the interesting thing is that 1 will always be the snake tail. And as the array, or maybe I'll explain how the array works right now. Basically, every time the snake moves, the array grows by 1. So the array will get rather large by the end of your game. But the tail will always be the lowest number that's allowed to have color, and the head will always be the highest number that's allowed to have color. You'll understand the color things in a moment. So our snake is 2 squares long, so we're going to color those squares right here. So square 1, change the color to color, and color is set up down here in its own little dude. Color select, so that's where color will be chosen. So that's what allows you to change the color of the snake. And where were we? All right, so this just sets up the snake, gets it ready to go. This sets up the direction where the snake will go. So if you want it, instead of going left to right, when it begins, it can go down or it can go up. You could make it go left as well, but then it very quickly run into the wall. So you choose all that here. Then we get an apple on the board and we start up the snake. Now the cool stuff is really going to be here in movement. And I'm going to try not to spend too much time on it. So basically what it is we have a loop that's going to go through. And each time it goes through, it's going to move the snake. And within this loop, it's going to figure out if you have just hit the arrow key, up, down, left, or right. And then it's going to figure out what to do based off of that. So here, this dude right here, it's another loop within a loop. And you have timer max, and then the do while, and then timer and timer max. This is just what controls how quickly it goes across the screen. Sleep 1, you've got your comment here to explain that. And now we have the key presses. So this is what happens if you press the Q key. That's how I found out you could press Q to quit the game or end the game. So if you press Q, then it's going to show you the score and it's going to end the game. So this is the way that it ends the game. It pops up a form, gives you a score, then it ends the macro. Now down here, these two sections, all that we're doing is we are figuring out which button you pushed and what to do after that. And that's where the direction 1, 2, 3, 4, left, right, up, down, whatever those numbers were, comes in handy because it just sees which key you pushed, it resets the direction variable, and then we go down to moved. And do events, just make sure that we can still hit the keys and do stuff in Excel so we can still control the snake while the macro is running. So do events is pretty cool. So go to moved. Each one of these pretty much functions the same. So let's go to moved and let us check it out. So it's kind of interesting. This is what grows the snake, eats the apple, and does everything. So the first thing is we increment count by 1. Then we increment the snake array by 1. So we increase the snake by 1 each time. So the array that holds the snake information, actually grows each time that the snake moves, regardless of what else happens. So it's just going to grow. So then the next thing is to figure out which way is it growing and how much color should it have. Did it eat an apple or not? So here we figure out which way it's going. So you can see right, down, left, or up. And what it does is it gets the head of the snake. So remember that's the highest number in the array, which was count, except for we just incremented count by 1 here. So we have to do the previous count. So we do count minus 1, and then we offset it accordingly. So up, down, left, right, however you need to here using offset. So this is going to get us the new cell where the snake is going now. And then, this is a range reference, it's going to pop that into the last item in the array. So now the snake head has moved. Okay, it can get kind of confusing, I know, but now let's move on to the next thing. So now we know where the head is and we've made the array bigger. So now we need to figure out what's up with the colors. So remember I said colors are the backbone of everything. Colors are awesome. So what this does right here now, select case. It's basically an if statement. So we have one right here, and one more. And case is using the colors. Remember I said that was important. RGB max, 0 RGB max. And then down here, 3 RGB maxes. And then the last one is just an else. So it gives you a comment here, but it doesn't really explain so much. This is when you eat an apple. This is when you move to the next cell, but nothing else happens. So how does it do that? Well, you move to the next cell if the next thing is just white. White means there's nothing there. Nothing should happen. You just move. This one is pink, or the apple color, or whatever it is. So that's the color for the apple. Now, how do we know if the next cell where the snake is going is white or pink? Well, right here, because we found out the direction it's going, and then we added the next cell's range, the next cell basically, into the array, and we made it the last item in the array. So now all we have to do is reference that last item in the array using count, snake count, and get its color, interior color. So now we know the current color of that cell. Now when the snake goes there, it will eventually be blue, right? But right now it's not. Now it's whatever color it was before it was turned into blue. So if it is the color of the apple, then we do the code for the apple. If it's white, we do the code for white. And if it is neither one of those, it means that you hit the wall or you hit yourself and you died. So you see, color determines everything. It's really cool. He's not saying if you intersected with the array and making the array the exact number of squares that is blue at this moment. He's just saying, no, let's just color them and figure out if you ran into the right color or not. I think that's a pretty cool way to do this. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to explain this. Now what we can do is take a look at, let's leave the apple one for a moment, but let's say it's just moving to another white cell. So what do we need to do right now is we need to make the new cell that we added to the array blue, and we need to make the end, the butt of the snake, which was blue, now white. So we make the new head of the snake blue, and then here, I don't actually know if he needs this line. Because this line, all right, let's close this. This line right here will send you back to the apple. Not certain if you need that. Maybe that just corrects an error that can happen if it's an outlier. But anyway, let's skip this one. You can see how it works though if the snake array count minus length, if the color of that equals the apple, then it goes to the apple. But it's talking about the butt of the snake, the tail. So I don't know. Anyway, so down here, this is what actually, as the comment underneath it says, sets the tail white. So how do we get the tail? Well, basically, what we're going to do, and you'll see this in a moment when we talk about the apple section, is the length actually controls how many cells long the snake is. So the blue portion of the snake is controlled by length. Count, which you may have realized by now, since it just adds every cell where the snake was, count is not going to just include the blue cells. So we can't just turn everything that isn't here white. So what you do is you say, these are all the cells in the array, right? Okay. So let us subtract all the cells that should be in the snake. Let's say 2, only 2 should be blue. Okay, so I want to get whatever is after 2, and then I want to change that color to white. Now that does sound kind of confusing, so if you're a little bit confused by this, you can do some debugging and check out the snake array and the count and the length variables. Sometimes it's pretty helpful to do that, especially if you just go like this, and you can add the count to the watch window and add the length to the watch window, and then you can view the watch window, and then you can run the macro and just hit the play button every time it comes to here and keep hitting play, play, play. So it'll cycle through that and you'll see the values change. And that's one way to kind of help you understand how count and length work together, because count, right? Count is going to increment each time, no matter what. Each time the snake moves, count will change. But length, okay, so now I'm thinking maybe I should have talked about the apple dude first. Length is adjusted when you eat the apple. So the first thing that we do is we make the head the correct color, which is blue, and then we update the length. So the snake now should have an additional 2 cells at the end of it. That's how we increase the length of the blue cells. For the score, well, it's just a little thing to figure out what score to give you, including a multiplier based on the difficulty. That could be kind of fun to change around and play with if you want. Then we just create another apple. Then, as it says here, tail cell unchanged. We don't need to make the tail cell white here. All we're doing here is changing the color of the head and making the snake 2 bigger. This stuff, it's just to increment the score, nothing too interesting. And then what will happen is this will run through and it'll run again. And then the next time, you just ate an apple. So the next time you're going to be on a white square. So you'll be back down here. So what this will do is it will change the head, and then it's going to make the tail of the snake white. However, what will happen is that the count and the length will be a little bit off right now. So you have to figure to increase the length of the snake, what's going to happen is you're going to leave the tail blue in place as you color the head of the snake. Notice when we go back here, this sounds confusing, I know. Let us go ahead and run our snake. Okay, so I have go on there. But watch the butt of the snake if you can. It'll pause for a moment. So every time I eat the dude, the butt of it will pause as the head grows. And that's how it adds the color to it. So when you're going through the code, sometimes it's nice to just switch back and forth between the snake game itself and the code to try to better visualize this. Okay, view, where are we? Project Explorer, Module 1. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking about this section because I do fear that it could end up being very confusing, but the point is that in each one of these we color the head correctly. So the head gains color. And then down here we only color the tail white once the snake has grown to the correct length. Now let's see if there's anything else I want to cover. This is the important section, so I spend a lot of time going over this, and it's pretty cool, the movement macro. All right, let us see here. Countdown. Okay, that's just the 3, 2, 1, go. Here's the apple. Apple, once again, we use color to make sure that everything's okay. So I believe it's if, all right, so we get the new column and row for the apple, and then we make sure that the range reference right here, we check if the color of it is white. If it is white, then we proceed with everything else in here. Otherwise, we just redo the loop. So it's really cool that you use color for everything. All right, I'm not going to talk about anything else there. Let's see, difficulty select, nothing else there. Color select, reset, keep best. All right, so that's all that I'm going to cover here. As usual, I do love to take my time and be quite thorough. This macro is really interesting and really good for learning how to do things. So I highly recommend, actually even if you know how to program, I recommend downloading it and looking through it because it's kind of cool and it's kind of interesting. And like I said, I'm going to put the links underneath the video for this guy's stuff, but you can also see here Ken's Excel Snake Game version 3.0, and you can see his Reddit username. I guess he prefers it to be linked to that. But I'll also put a link to the file that he has on one of his other pages under this video as well. It is all Ken's stuff. I haven't done anything with this, so all the credit goes to him. It is an awesome game, so check it out. Do make sure that you have all of your work windows closed before you open this guy up and start playing around with it, though. That is always a very good idea. So while we are all stuck in quarantine, I hope that you are hanging in there, staying healthy, staying safe, and I hope this game can bring a little bit of joy to your day in Excel.